The Gretsch Silver Falcon is a spectacular guitar, and honestly, I am just blown away by it. And if I could sum up this entire video with just one sentence, it would be that this Falcon represents Gretsch at its absolute finest. And from the absolutely beautiful black paint job, the sparkle binding, the attention to detail on the headstock, the Falcon wings at the top, and then the Falcon and the pickguard, this guitar just screams elegance. Now, I do quickly want to thank Zounds for sending me this guitar for the demo and my initial review. I don't get to keep this guitar unless I pay for it, just like all of you, but they were super kind to send it to me for a pretty extended period of time for me to gather some thoughts and see if I really love this guitar. And so with all that said, please use the affiliate links down below. It helps support the channel. It allows me to continue making videos, and it also supports those that help support this channel. So I think it's a win all the way around. Now, with all that said, I have had the privilege of playing this guitar for the last 3 months, and I've got a lot of in-depth thoughts about it. And so I'm really excited to share that with you guys today. We'll go over everything from the specs about this guitar. We'll give you some sound samples. I'll tell you everything I love about it. And of course, stick around to the very end because there's some things that I think would maybe disqualify you from wanting to buy this guitar. So let's talk about it. Now, if you're not familiar, the Silver Falcon applies a lot of modern updates to the traditional Falcon from Gretsch. Most notably, it's going to have a much thinner double cut body as compared to the traditional White Falcon. And I also upgraded the original bridge from the Tune-O-Matic style bridge to a roller style bridge, and I did that for a few reasons. Personally, I wanted to get the action just a little bit lower to make it feel more like what I'm used to with some of my other guitars. And I also felt like the improved tuning stability was a big advantage. Even though the Tune-O-Matic was fine, I feel like the roller bridge gives me more control with the Bigsby. And of course, there are other differences between the traditional Falcon and the Silver Falcon, but I hit on the main ones up top. And now I want to dive into more about the body specs of this guitar. Like I already mentioned at the top of this video, this is going to come in a really beautiful black finish with a laminated maple top and back. And it's going to feature a lot of craftsmanship and flair that we've all come to love from Gretsch. We've also got the double silver binding, which I think looks super awesome. We've got that signature Falcon pickguard. And then one tiny detail that is actually really cool is going to be the jeweled chrome knobs with those little red diamonds on each of them. Then we've got two F-holes, both with that silver binding. And quite frankly, I think this is the most beautiful guitar that I've ever had the privilege of playing. Now, in terms of the pickups, it's going to have Gretsch's high fidelity pickups, which are kind of Gretsch's take on a TV Jones style pickup or a traditional Filtertron pickup, but it's going to have a bit more of a modern edge to it. They're not my personal favorite pickups out there, and I'll talk more about that later as well. Now, in terms of our controls, we're going to have a master volume knob at the top, and then we're going to have a volume independent for both the neck and for the bridge, and then a tone control knob as well. And then lastly, we've got a string through Bigsby B7, which if you have never swapped out the pickups on a Bigsby style guitar before, you will know it is a huge pain in the butt. So this makes it a lot better. It makes it way easier. So really nice modern update. Now the Silver Falcon is going to have a U-shaped neck, and then it's going to have a 24.6 inch scale length and a modern Tusk XL nut that is really going to help with tuning stability. That plus we're also going to have binding that goes all the way up the neck, up into the headstock. This is going to help eliminate some of those sharper fret edges as well. And the dot inlays are clear, but they're not overwhelming. And I actually really love this. I think because this guitar is so busy in the body and in the headstock, not having really distracting overlays in the neck was a really smart design choice. It gives the guitar some opportunity to kind of breathe, at least aesthetically, and it looks really great. They are evident, it's clear to see where you're at on the frets, and they're not overly distracting. Now, one sweet touch with the Falcons is going to be the bigger wing pegs on the tuning pegs. It's just cool looking, they're great tuners, and they're also locking, which again is going to make the string change process super easy with a Bigsby. Now, a couple other quick things that I enjoy about the neck. Specifically, I think the headstock is fantastic. I think the Gretsch logo with the wings and the binding just looks super awesome. I also enjoy the medium jumbo frets. As somebody that tends to push down a little harder on the strings, I feel like this doesn't create any weird intonation issues for me. And overall, this guitar just screams quality. It is an absolute work of art, and with this guitar being made in Japan, I'm honestly not surprised. At least in my experience with the made in Japan Fender guitars, they're really fantastic instruments, especially for the price, and I don't think the Silver Falcon is any exception to that.
Honestly, after owning this guitar, I can understand why these guitars are so popular within the praise and worship realm. Not only do they just look sweet, they play great, but their pickups fit that perfect kind of niche where they can do everything. And I'll talk more about that here in a second. But when we look at bands like Elevation Worship, Bethel, Hillsong, Jesus Culture, all of those individuals have recorded songs or albums using either a Penguin or a Falcon style guitar. Now, earlier I mentioned that the high fidelity pickups from Gretsch weren't my absolute favorite, and that's mostly just because I prefer the TV Jones Classics or the Classics Plus. However, these are kind of nice because they do have a little bit more grit and power to them. I do feel like they embody more of that modern kind of edge that the Silver Falcon is trying to take. And because of that, I think it works really well. And one thing that I love about Filtertron pickups is they can do everything. They can do metal, they can do praise and worship, they can do chimey and clean, blues and jazz. There's not anything that Filtertron pickups don't feel like they can do and do really well. They're compressed, they're honky, they've got some growl to them. They've got a nice amount of mid-range push and treble, and they're controlled in the low end. And again, it's just a really spectacular sounding guitar. And like you heard from the samples earlier, it can cover a lot of of ground. Now, at the top of this video, I did mention that there was a few disqualifiers to either who this guitar would be good for or whether or not I would recommend it to you personally. And one of the biggest ones, I think, is going to be the price. And I've purposely not talked about that because this is a very expensive guitar. Brand new, these cost around $3,600. You can typically find them used for around $3,000. And it does come with a great case, and the hardware, the electronics, the playability, the craftsmanship, the tonality of this guitar is definitely worth that price point, but it's very, very expensive. And as somebody that has owned a few different Gretsches, I've owned a Duo Jet, and then I've also owned a few of their Electromatic series, which is their imported models that you can get for around, $400 to $600. Gretsch makes a spectacular guitar at any price point. Their $600 guitars sound, feel, play amazing. I think this guitar is no different. I think you're just paying for a lot of extra flair and honestly that Falcon name. And a couple other things that I think may disqualify somebody from wanting this guitar is some of those brand biases and preferences like I mentioned I had earlier. I typically gravitate more towards Fender style guitars, and this doesn't really play like that. It's super comfortable, but the scale length is different, the neck is different, and this is definitely the flashiest of all the guitars that I own. It's very busy, and it looks really cool, but I can understand why not everybody loves the double sparkle binding and the huge headstock and all the bells and the whistles of the Falcon. All in all, if I have not made this video explicitly clear, I love this guitar. I think it is sick, it plays great, and it sounds like that dream tone that I had in my head. So please support Zounds, check out their link down below. I couldn't do this video without their help. And then lastly, check out this other video of the Jennings Voyager, which is another really spectacular guitar with a slightly different take. See you later.